Hello and happy Friday, and thanks for tuning in to RadioFreeRhinecliff.org. And this show in particular, correct me if I'm Norm, I'm your host, Norm, and I'm thrilled to be here tonight with Dr. Michele Tugade.
Hello.
Hello, Michele. How are you? Thanks so much for coming in. I'm going to start with an announcement. We were just talking about our mutual friend, Leslie Hill, who has a show opening tonight of her beautiful photographs at the Rhine Cellar in Rhinebeck, New York. So everybody should go.
Everyone should go.
Michele and I are going down there right after this to support Leslie and see this wonderful show. Now, are you an art lover in general?
I love photography. I love looking at art, appreciating art in nature.
Right.
I love the theme of Leslie's art show. It's all the women we once were.
I know.
It just really speaks to all of the things that we're thinking about as women in particular at this time in history.
Have you seen many of the photos? You've just read the theme.
I saw a few little teasers, and I know a little bit about it, and I love the opening poem. So I'm so excited to check it out.
Right, all the women we once were, or all the people we once were, as we sort of grew up and moved through life, and that's a little bit. You're in your wheelhouse as a psychologist.
Yes.
And what is it? You've got a PhD in psychiatric what?
In psychology.
Psychology.
And the field that I studied is social psychology.
Right.
And that was from the University of Michigan.
Okay.
But now I also have a specialty in health psychology. So that is looking at the intersections between the mind and the body and how our psychological processes help us understand our everyday behavior and how to cope with stress.
Right. Help you, the academic, understand people's everyday behavior. Yeah. And people themselves, need to work pretty hard to understand their motivations and to glean insights about their behavior.
Exactly.
So you're, do you do any actual work with patients, or it's all academic stuff?
My research is in the laboratory, but we also have outside research with non-test subjects that are out in the field, so to speak.
Okay.
And in terms of the application of my work, I've been doing a lot of public speaking in a number of different domains with educators, with female executives, with people, for young children, as well as women in particular. So there's a lot of applications of the work that I do to help people achieve resilience.
And do you enjoy that, the public speaking stuff?
I love it.
Oh, you just lit up.
Yeah.
And what do you like so much about that?
I love it because it's a sense of how people can resonate with the work that I do in the laboratory or that I write about in articles. Right. And it really helps me see and get feedback of the research that I'm doing. Does it actually apply to everyday life?
Right. What a treat. So a typical thing, some corporation will hire you. Mm-hmm. You'll come in and talk to them about what?
I have actually, a lot of this took off during COVID. And a lot of individuals and corporations, families, different individuals were interested in how to cope with stress that they were experiencing, in particular as a result of the COVID pandemic. And when they call me in, I'll work with a corporation, for example. We'll talk about what are some of the themes that they want to talk about. Are they working on team dynamics? Are they interested in cooperation among team players? Is there a difference in the social hierarchy that they want to manage? Or also how to inspire their workers to be more productive, but also more satisfied with their jobs.
Right.
So we'll work together on different themes and different questions that they may have. And then we would design, for example, a workshop associated with their team on how to actually implement some of the strategies that my research shows might be effective, and we test it out with their colleagues.
And then when you're doing that, are you sort of getting additional information to back up your research?
Yeah. I usually give readings based on my work. So they have some background, and I will give a lecture about the work that I've done. And then we do validation studies. So we assess their reports of their satisfaction, following them up a few months later to see what are some of the outcomes. And it's been really rewarding to see, the feedback that I get from some of the work that I've done.
Right. Huh, very interesting. And how did you fall into that? It seems miles away from academia.
I think for the topic that I do, so the research that I do is on psychological resilience. And it seems to resonate with a lot of people, especially given a lot of the chaos that we're all experiencing in our lives, political unrest, fear or concerns about the climate, the epidemic of loneliness with adolescents. So many things that seem to resonate with people based on my research. For whatever reason, people have found out about the research that I do, perhaps through some of the publications that I write or the more popular press pieces that I write. And they'll reach out to me individually and ask me to work with their company. I mean, I've also had some people, for example, at Mohonk, ask me to do a retreat there. And that has been incredibly rewarding because it's also in the presence of beauty and nature, which is an element of the research that I do also.
Beauty and nature.
Well, it's on positive emotions. So the work that I do in the field of psychology, when I first started studying psychology in general, I was an undergraduate. I was an undergraduate at Vassar College, where I teach now.
Oh, nice.
And I was studying the psychology of depression at the time.
Okay.
And we were looking at the causes and symptoms and consequences of feeling negative emotions like sadness and anxiety and fear. And what we found was there are different ways of coping with depression. And at the time, we were looking at two different veins. One is called ruminators. Okay. So those are those who just kind of have a downward spiral, thinking about the negative. Why am I feeling bad right now? Why am I feeling blue? What caused that? And what happens if I continue to be in this rut? So that's called rumination. And the healthier form of coping is called distraction. And so we looked at what are the different ways that people distract themselves. Are they going out to exercise? Are they reading a book? Are they going to a party? Are they not focusing on the problem? So when it was time for me to go to graduate school, because that's what I did soon thereafter, I was curious on the other spectrum of our experience. So a lot of psychology at the time was focused on negative emotions and what are some of the disorders that we have.
Right, the ruminator
depression, and also a lot of the psychological disorders like associated with anxiety and loneliness. And I was interested in what's the other realm of our experience. And at the time, there were not a lot of psychologists who studied positive emotions or, excellence or success. And the field of positive psychology, which is another branch of psychology that I'm associated with, was focused just on that. And that was the emergence of a new way of looking at, psychology. And it's not in the absence of negative experiences, but it's to add flavor and to think about how can we understand why do we experience joy? What are the benefits of love and gratitude and appreciation? So that's where, when I talk about the beauty and the scenery, right. What is it? Why are we drawn to art? Why are we drawn to things that are beautiful and magnificent? The music that we listen to.
Right.
And our research shows that what it does, it actually, I study a theory called the broaden and build theory of positive emotions. And what that means is that it brings us closer together. It broadens our social network, our friendships, and it helps to build a lot of our personal resources so that we can solve problems better, we can cope better with different situations, and we can have a more full experience and a broader perspective on how to be creative or be innovative.
Right. Or appreciate creativity and innovation.
Exactly.
So is broaden and build sort of the answer as to why people like art?
It's one of the reasons. It's one of the reasons why people experience joy or even awe. So I've written about the experience of awe and wonder. And when you are in the presence of a beautiful piece of art, for example, the research shows that we actually feel smaller because everything else is expansive around us. So we have less of self-focus than that we're opening our view of the world and greater appreciation of other things beyond ourselves, which is so important because we tend to be very self-focused, and it gives us a chance to appreciate what's out there.
Right. So less self-focus, less rumination, I guess. Yes. So giving you an opportunity to shift your mindset so that you can just get a reset. So many things that we need in life is just a simple moment, a pause, so that you can just have a reboot, so to speak, and rebuild in this moment. And do you do things intentionally to get that reboot?
In my personal life?
Yeah.
I do. I ride horses. I'm at the Southlands Foundation in Rhinebeck, New York.
Right.
And I was on the board for 10 years there. It's a non-for-profit organization that's focused on equestrian experiences. It's a school of horsemanship, and it also has a nature conservancy portion of it. So we're interested in preserving the land.
Right.
It's 220 acres in Rhinebeck of untouched land. And this was established by Deborah Dowse, who is the founder of the Southlands Foundation. She's one of the prominent women of the Hudson Valley and was a contemporary with Eleanor Roosevelt and Daisy Suckley.
Oh, so sweet.
So, and she really wanted to make Southlands. So her family estate was in Rhinebeck, and she wanted to make Southlands so the Southlands of her family estate is why it's called Southlands. She wanted to make it a place where people can have, a peace of mind, have serenity, have a break away from the outside world.
Right.
And horses provide that opportunity, and also being out in nature.
And they provide that opportunity for you. It's like as a reboot.
Yes.
So how often do you ride?
I ride about 2 to 3 times a week.
And do you ever, sort of find yourself in a funk and just going grrr at the whole world and think, I need to go ride?
Yes, I will intentionally do it. I think sometimes it requires an intentional, I should get out there and go sit on the horse or even just be there. It's not always the easiest thing, but with practice, it becomes easier.
Right. It's not always the easiest thing because people who are in that kind of a funk don't want to do anything more often than not in my experience. They're like, I'm just going to lie here and mope and like wallow in this like pool of funk. But you successfully get up and do something because it works for you.
Yeah, I do. And I think it's, I'm fortunate that we are in a beautiful place like the Hudson Valley where, it's just outside your door, just, take a walk, take a look out your window. But not everybody has that. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm so grateful to live here. Right.
But also not everybody sort of has the get up and go to go do the thing that helps them reboot. What words of wisdom do you have, or what research have you come up with that will help people to take that first step to reboot themselves?
What I've been looking at with my research shows that it doesn't take a lot to have the benefit of positive emotions. It could be, I call these micro moments of joy, where it doesn't have to be an intentional activity where you're calling up a lot of resources or mustering up the strength to walk out your door. It could be being grateful, taking a pause to think of something you're grateful for or to whom you may be grateful. Right. It could be just looking at something that's beautiful, a flower on the road. A piece of art. Right. Even in hospitals, for example, where you can't get up and move, research shows that even just having a plant in your office can provide the benefits as well.
Well, what about TV and Instagram and stuff?
Yeah,
which doesn't always seem so positive. I mean, can that be a positive reboot for people?
Definitely, and I think I am of the perspective that going online can have benefits. It's not something that I think it's something that provides joy for people. It's obviously very rewarding and activates the reward centers of your brain. But dopamine is released when you're looking online. And even just scrolling for a few minutes can be very soothing for people to take you out of the rut for a moment.
Right. Huh. And so is that one of the other things you do to sort of reboot?
To go online?
Yeah.
I love looking at the beautiful photos. I mean, I know that they're super curated and they're...
Sure,
but that's the intention, I think.
So is the Metropolitan Museum.
Yeah, exactly. There's an experience that is intentionally designed to bring people out of their mindsets. And I think one of the things is to make sure that is limited. There's times when to do it and times when to turn it off.
Right.
But I think that it does provide some relief and a respite for people when they just need a little break.
Right. So for you as an activity, writing, it's gratitude, taking stock of the good things. It's the diversion of TV or Instagram or whatever. What other things do you personally do to reboot?
I do yoga.
Oh, nice.
And mindfulness meditation. So I do yoga at the Rhinebeck yoga studio here in town. And that's been wonderful. And I just do it, sometimes even at home. And so I know for myself, but also research shows just that movement can be very releasing. And it's something that helps to loosen things up, just not even in your joints, but also with your minds, because you're giving access to different ways of thinking and kind of letting it process and through your body and not just through like being stuck at home.
Right. I love the whole field you're in of positive psychology, and you keep saying resilience, which is wonderful. When did you realize that you were interested in psychology?
Oh my gosh. So I didn't know I was interested in psychology. When I was an undergrad at Vassar, I thought I was going to be an economics major.
Oh, boy.
And I started to take classes. But Vassar is a liberal arts institution that encourages you to dabble in a number of different courses. And I dabbled into psychology my sophomore year. And I really fell in love with it. It's something that I just resonated with. I would talk about it with my family back, when I would go home to California, and I was always thinking about it.
Right.
And so that was when I realized I wanted to major in it. But when I think back at my own life, I think that some of my upbringing with my parents' motivation and how we grew up really kind of instilled the viewpoint of being positive. They would have positive affirmations written on poster board throughout
your parents
our
did.
house. Yeah. And my mother, to this day, my mom sends me a positive affirmation every morning, me and my twin sister, Ruby, in California.
I love that so much. So were they sort of like gentle-handed in their oversight and help and teaching?
They would never have thought that psychology was a field at all. I think that with all of my family, I've come from a family of 4 kids. So my 2 older brothers and my twin sister, and we're all in different fields. And my parents the reason they were here, they immigrated to the United States from the Philippines, was in part to provide us with education.
Right.
And so they were very encouraging to just appreciate education that we were offered here in the United States. So we took advantage of it, and they were very encouraging of just having us do what made us feel really encouraged and brought us joy.
And what kind of fields were they in, or are they in?
My father, my late father, he was in business, but he dabbled in agriculture, so he was very interested in the land. And my mother is a CPA, so she's an accountant. Okay. And is she or any of your siblings still in the Bay Area? Yes, all 3 of them are in the Bay Area. Oh, wow. My oldest brother, Ed, is an attorney, and my brother, Gerald, is an engineer. And my twin sister Ruby is in creative development for business strategy. And were any of the kids born in the Philippines? My oldest brother was. Right. And he he was born in the Philippines. My parents immigrated to the United States and went back to retrieve him and bring him to the States. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah. So that I think I'm sure that was challenging for them, and that built their own resilience, because it's something that they had to do. Very forward thinking. I mean, when I think about the sacrifices they've made for us, it's incredible.
And so did you, when you were young, did you go back and visit family there? You must have aunts and uncles and grandparents.
Yeah, huge family. I've gone back. Haven't gone back recently. So it's always so interesting to see, where my parents grew up.
Right.
And I got to, meet my grandparents on my father's side who stayed in the Philippines. And then my grandmother from my mother's side moved to the States, and she lived with us when we were growing up.
Right. And so did they speak the language? Was it Tagalog or Filipino?
Ilocano. So that's, Ilocano. But there's Tagalog is a dialect, but my parents are from the Northern Islands, and the dialect there is Ilocano.
Ilocano.
Yeah.
And so did you grow up hearing that?
Yes.
And do you speak some now?
I should speak better. I think with practice, I can understand it. And I really need to practice, because it's something I want to.
And are all your siblings sort of the same level of proficiency?
Yeah. Yeah. I think who's the best at it? I think my sister's pretty good at it.
Your twin sister.
My twin sister.
That's really something. So are you identical twins?
We are. She's 7 minutes older than I am.
Uh-huh. And did she lord that over you all through?
Yeah, and I worked the youngest too, so it works both ways.
How does that happen, working the youngest?
I don't know. I think she's more responsible, or like she, will take on a responsible role. So being youngest has perks.
Yeah, such as
just being able to lean on her. And, feel that I could lean on her if I needed to. And
did you get away with things as the youngest?
I did. And so I think we helped each other with our homework sometimes growing up. And she would, take some, I don't know if I got away with things per se, because we were both the youngest females in our family. But I could always just count on her. If I needed to, she would, take it for me.
And were your parents always good at telling you apart?
Yes.
Yes. And were the teachers always good at telling you apart?
Yeah, we did not. Despite the fact that we're identical, we don't look the same. So, and we grew up wearing the same clothes because twins did growing up. And then we really didn't like it. And after a while, we're like, let's just get us our own
identical outfits.
Identical
Until you were how old?
9. I know. That was like our birthday gift. It's like, you can wear your own, style clothes now.
Right. Well, I'll drink to that. Now, you brought a drink here.
I did.
Well, tell us what you brought.
So I wanted to keep it seasonal and refreshing, since we've been having such heat waves here in the Hudson Valley.
Unpleasant.
So this is I've been really into spritzers. It's a blueberry lemon spritzer. But the featured ingredient is a rye from our friend's distillery. It's a small batch distillery called Branchwater Farm.
Oh, yeah.
Have you been?
Yeah.
It's lovely, 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 owned by Kevin Pike and Robin Touche. And it's lovely. And we've been visiting there, and I think this is their inaugural rye, so the first time they've ever made it.
Wow.
So
you made it into this cocktail.
Yeah, so I made a special.
Well, cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you so much.
I hope you enjoy it.
Oh, that is just delicious.
Right? Very refreshing.
Yeah, what a really nice combination.
I made the blueberry smash for it myself.
Yeah, when you said blueberry smash and all that, I thought, it's going to be vodka.
Oh,
but it's
I know.
the rye, which is like surprising.
Exactly.
Sort of takes it to a really nice place. So we were cheersing you and your twin sister at 9, starting to more individuate via like your own outfits.
Yes.
Your own wardrobes. And how did that feel?
It felt great. I love my sister. And so we actually went to Vassar together as undergrads.
Oh, my goodness.
I know. But we kind of, I don't know if intentionally, but we did very different things. So I was in psychology, and she was an English and drama person. So we were different enough in that way, very different fields. And we had different friends, but we also had friends and, that we shared, and we all knew each other.
How nice. And then so after Vassar, you said you went to Michigan.
I did. So I took a year off, a post-bac year. I went back home to California.
Okay.
And I did a post-bac at Berkeley. So we were just thinking about Berkeley, and that was wonderful because I actually wanted to know, do I want to go to grad school? And I worked in a lab when I was there.
And did your sister go back for the year after as well?
She went to Yale School of Drama. So we were apart, that year. I was back in California.
Was that the first point where you were really apart, where your paths weren't going to reconvene?
That's right.
Shortly.
Mm-hmm. And it was great because we would visit each other still,
right.
And I think that was we were ready for that, and it's been great.
Right. Oh, isn't that nice? And so now let me go back to being a kid. Did you have any of the typical twin stuff, like your own languages or your own codes?
Yeah, I think we do, but we can't articulate what that is because we feel like there is like an ESP between us. So we know
right.
that we know what each other's thinking and feeling, and we'll sometimes predict, but we can't articulate what that is. We didn't have a specific language per se, but an understanding right. between us.
Right.
And still
do. And how often do you keep in touch?
We talk every day, as much as we can, but we definitely text every day, not necessarily talking on the phone. So we're very close.
And the brothers, you keep in touch with them?
Yeah, I keep in touch with them, and we see each other as much as we can when I'm back in the Bay Area, or they'll visit out here. And so I think when I go home, it's the opportunity for everyone to get together, which has been really fun.
That's so nice. How often do you get back?
I go during the breaks. So Vassar, as an academic, we have breaks, which is very fortunate. So I'll go during some of the breaks and see them when I can.
Right. So you went to high school in the city of San Francisco?
High school was in a suburb called Daly City.
Okay.
And it was called Westmore High School. And I was there. It was a great high school. I was a cheerleader in high school.
Oh, jeez.
And that was fun. So maybe that's part of my positive emotion experience, also building on it.
Could well be. I mean, that's the job of a cheerleader, right?
Exactly.
Is to put the positive emotions out there.
Boost people up. And
yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? I never even thought of that connection.
I know.
So was that fun, being a cheerleader?
It was really fun.
And for the radio audience, I'm going to guess like 5'2". You're not especially...
I think I'm 5'0".
5'0". But you're not especially big person. And I'm wondering, were you always on top of the pyramid?
I was, yeah. And I was the one who, it would have to be, I wasn't a base, they called it the flyer, or the top of the pyramid. And we did compete, and that was fun. So it wasn't just cheering on the team, but we were actually an athletic sport.
It's
and
amazing.
We would go to camp, yeah.
When you see people who are really have that down, it's like, oh, that is a sport.
Yeah.
And so
it's fun.
Where did you compete?
In Disneyland. So that was where our nationals were. And that was pretty intense, but it was definitely bonding with your teammates and intense practice.
Right. And what's the season for the sport of cheerleading?
Football and basketball, at least for when I was growing up.
So that's like the whole year, basically.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So was there time to play any other sports?
In high school, I considered that my sport.
Right.
And then in college is when I rode on the equestrian team at Vassar.
And had you ridden prior to that?
Dabbled off and on. We lived where I grew up in California was by a beach. So they had trail rides there for horses, and I would go on those. Right. I also rode with one of my former high school teachers who had a farm, so I would ride at her farm. But my formal training was at Southlands with some of the trainers I have there, like Susie Williams, who's there at Southlands now.
During your time at Vassar as a student?
Yeah.
So you'd ridden some, but not. Doesn't sound like you did any competition or anything.
I competed with Vassar.
Prior
to that, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you got on the team at Vassar.
So,
congratulations.
Thank you. The team, what was interesting about the team is that it was through a league called the Intercollegiate Horse Show Association, and they traveled to different schools to compete, but you had to make it equitable across all of the riders. You would pull a name of a horse out of a hat, and that was your assigned horse to compete in, and you had to be a good what's called catch rider, like basically learn the horse by watching it.
Like
and then
sight reading music.
Yeah, right. And then so that everyone was equal in terms of they weren't able to practice on a horse for very long.
Huh. So each new competition, you'd be on a different horse.
Yes, because it would be a different school. You could talk to people and get a sense of who the horse was, but it was always new, and you would just kind of hope for the best when you picked a name out of a hat.
And so did your team have intel on the horses? Like, oh, that's like Whiskey River. He's
right. The coaches would give a little, because, it's always the same horse every year. So, or at the school, and they would give a little bit of insight if they could.
Right.
And you would watch and kind of get tips on how they went and what are some of their quirks.
And now I'm guessing you have the same horse every time you go out.
At Southlands.
Yeah.
Yes.
And this is your horse.
It's owned by Southlands.
Oh.
And I share board. So meaning I support the board of the horse there. And the horse is used in lessons at Southlands as well.
But do people own horses and board them at Southlands as well?
It's a mix there. So we have half of the entire foundation is boarder horses, are privately owned. They board their horses there, and half are for the lesson program. So it's a school of horsemanship where we provide training for people to learn how to ride and keep practicing how to ride, like myself. So I'm interested in just having the experience of riding and being with my friends when we ride together.
Right. So when you say keep practicing riding, what are you practicing right now? Which elements of riding do you think, I'd like to be better at that? Right
now, I work with my horse and my group and my trainer on different ways to get a horse more strong in terms of different movements. It's called flat work that prepares you for being out in the field. And so we'll do exercises where we'll strengthen the horse's fitness and also work on discipline with a horse. So in terms of, are you working in partnership with each other? Can you really understand what you're communicating to your horse, and can your horse understand what is being communicated? What's beautiful about working with horses is that they're non-judgmental, and we always say they know our emotions before we do. So they're really attuned. And one of the things that we work on is that partnership. It's you're understanding how you're working together, and that's what makes it a different type of sport, because you're working with a non-human animal that is very powerful, but you're working gracefully together and hopefully, having a wonderful partnership. And I believe that the horses really enjoy it also when we're really in sync with one another.
Right. And do they actually know your emotions before you do?
I think they do. I think they definitely do. We are, as humans, adept at masking our emotions even to ourselves. We don't know if we're anxious necessarily unless you practice it, mindfulness, and they'll know right off the bat. So we always we have a partnership with a group at Samaritan Daytop, and these are individuals who are in recovery for substance use. And one of the things we tell the clients who come to Southlands is that horses can feel our heartbeats up to 4 feet away. So the moment you walk into the barn, they're assessing, is this person safe? They're animals of flight. So they are always paying attention. And so they're trying to regulate against your heartbeats. And if we work together, you can kind of have what's called co-regulation, that your heart beats and your cardiovascular systems are in sync. And that's one of the things that I think is really beautiful, is that horses actually are attuned in a way that we could be better at.
Right.
So we can learn a lot by being with them, and other animals, not just horses.
Right. So when you go, do you get the same horse every time? Mm-hmm. What's the horse's name?
Elsa.
Elsa.
She's a beautiful gray mare.
Uh-huh.
and she's lovely. And we've been working with her for several years now.
So you said horses are attuned to things that we could be better at being attuned to. How do people get better at that?
I think we need to increase our emotional intelligence. And that's something that I look at with some of the work that I do, is that if your heartbeat is racing for whatever reason, take a moment to ask yourself what in the situation might be leading to that. So we look to our environment to figure it out. Am I nervous because there's a saber-toothed tiger approaching me? Or am I just worried about the next, big event that I need to prepare for?
Right.
And when you're aware of that, it actually helps you have this, understand your emotional, like, why am I anxious? So that's one of the things that might be very helpful. If you pay attention, then you recognize that the reason you feel anxious in this example is that your body is preparing you for something. So it gives you information about what you're trying to, solve for yourself.
Right.
Or if you feel that you're feeling very low and you're not, willing to get up in the morning, maybe your body and your mind is telling you that you're feeling sad, and maybe it's telling you should retreat for a moment and withdraw so that you can pause and work on whatever it is you need to process with yourself for the moment.
Right. Okay. I'm gonna hit you up for some free therapy now. What you're just describing is sort of like known things, things that people see about themselves.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this test is coming up, or whatever. I'm stressed about this or that. I recently had a medical thing where I went to see these doctors. I was not stressed at all. I knew shit was going to be okay. I knew if it wasn't okay, they would have called me right away. And it had been an ongoing thing. They said, you know what? You're great. After 6 years, you're never going to have to come back.
Wow.
And I was not worried. I was like, had there been a problem, they would have called me. I left the office. I went and I just bawled in my car for like 45 minutes. And I'm like, okay, somewhere, unbeknownst to me, and I feel like I'm pretty tuned in, was all this stress.
Yeah.
How can people get in touch with that kind of stuff, which is not visible and not noticeable to them?
Yeah, and thanks for sharing that. I think that's, if people recognize, well, if I'm going to go to the doctor, of course I'm going to be anxious. I always wonder about, like, collect, the vitals that they collect at the, as you arrive to a doctor. Of course, your blood pressure is going to be very high because this is an unusual situation.
Yeah.
If people are more attuned and recognize that it's going to be an anxiety-inducing situation, pause, ask oneself, even forgive oneself for feeling anxious in the moment, to having compassion for these stressful experiences. One of the reasons why we bottle everything up is our society says we're not supposed to feel that right now. And so recognizing that it's okay to feel those unpleasant experiences helps to process it. And it's also important, I think, with the example you're saying, is that your body was preparing you physiologically. Your heart rate might have been increased. And when you found the relief, what's known as the parasympathetic nervous system is activated, which is the soothe and the replenish part of our bodies. So it's kind of like a relief. Oh, good. I need to just release what I've been holding on to. And so it's the body's way of releasing all of that tension.
Right.
And there's a lot that's released with tears, and the cortisol that's really associated with anxiety is released at that moment.
Right. I'm going to ask more. It was something I was not stressed about. I was like, oh, that thing, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
But then when they said, okay, it's all good, I've had this like really strong reaction. And I'm like, well, I never would have known that there was stress there.
Yeah.
And so I wondered since that moment, which is almost a year ago, like, how can I get in touch with stress inside me that I'm not feeling, not identifying, just not aware of?
Yeah. There's work that, in a book called Your Body Keeps the Score.
Right.
So it basically is that we really hold in a lot of our emotions. And once it's, maybe understanding that pain, if there's other sources of pain, it's a marker of an emotional experience. And so recognizing what are some of the things in our body that's actually telling us, that might be one way to do it. And also just the movement that we were talking about, sometimes just that release and the exhaling is one way to just make it, process that experience by the release of your body. So things that are really held tightly can lead to wear and tear on the body in a way that is unnecessary if it's held too long. We do a lot to our bodies because of how we process information or even block it out of our minds.
Right. Very interesting. The book was Your Body Keeps the Score?
Yes.
That's funny. And you have a book that sounds so amazing, the Handbook of Positive Emotions. How did that come about? I mean, it sounds just totally in line with your work.
This book came out after I spoke on a panel with other scholars in my field. And we were approached by a publisher at the time to put together series of articles that are associated with the academic research that supports the experience of positive emotions. So there are chapters on specific positive emotions like awe, curiosity, gratitude, love. And then there are also chapters that talk about the applications of it. So how does the experience of positive emotions link up with educators, with adolescents in a clinical population? Is there damage to experiencing too many positive emotions and too much? Because it's something we strive for, but it can also have detriments. There's the dark side to that as well.
Wait a minute. Let's talk about that. The dark side of having too much joy. Mm-hmm. What does that look like?
It could be the experience where people are feeling invincible. So you're taking unhealthy risks and you feel that anything that you do, you won't harm other people. And so to have that for too intense moments of too much joy, too intense joy. Also, I wrote a paper called Amp It Up or Tamp It Down, where there are times when you need to tamp down your positive emotions rather than amping it up. So there's different situations where it could be helpful to you to elevate your positive emotions. Like you're in a party and you're with your friends and you want to help your friends feel the joy that you're experiencing. But there are other times when you want to downplay the positive emotions because it's inappropriate, or it may be time to settle a little bit. So you think of little kids coming back from recess. It's like you need to come back down now.
Oh,
and
fun.
So and that's part of emotional intelligence, is knowing when to turn up the volume versus like turn it down a little bit.
Right. That's what I was just thinking. Emotional intelligence. That's great. Some people don't have that. Some people never get that.
Yeah. And it's something people can practice and really strengthen with different exercises that can help you identify what your emotions are and why you're experiencing them and what what's the information they're trying to tell you.
Right. And what are some of these exercises that people can take part in?
They can practice. So there's ways where you can learn to label or identify what your emotions are. And that's one way to, if you name your emotion, it actually helps you realize, okay, that's why I'm feeling this. And it's not just an overarching negative feeling or overarching positive experience. It's something that is associated with a specific experience.
Right. So presumably you've done that. You've named your emotions.
Yes.
How many emotions do you think you've identified with names?
Oh, I don't know, hundreds and more. So in different language, different cultures have more emotion words, and we have a few. There are nuances in the labeling of emotions or naming of emotions,
right.
And that's something that's less so for positive experiences. So one of the things that I research is what are the nuances of our positive experiences, like what's different with feeling serenity and what's different from feeling joy, exuberance, excitement.
Right.
And so those are a lot of different things that may be associated with different ways to navigate your world.
And did you say there's more nuance in the words that are used to describe positive emotions than negative emotions?
More for negative, I think. So, yeah,
okay.
but, you know, I think the more that people are able to think about this, so you might feel, you know, in some cultures, there's a word for joy you experience when you want to just squeeze a baby's cheeks. And there's one word for that. And so we'll just say, oh, I'm so happy, or how cute, you know, so.
It sounds like a Japanese
Exactly, yes. And so and suggesting that if they have more nuanced language to articulate the emotions, maybe they have more nuanced experiences also.
Right. I love that so much. So have you coined any phrases or invented any words in the course of your,
I should.
your work?
I should. And, you know, I have actually, I've been interested in identifying what the different nuances is, but I haven't made a specific word that's associated with a particular experience.
Must be linguists there at Vassar you could partner with for
Exactly. And we have done some work where we look at language of positive emotions. So we've written on that and looking at, you know, what are the different cultures and how do they articulate their experiences? Also, why do we have fewer words, or we're less likely to articulate what our experiences are?
Right. And when you say we, that's you and your graduate students?
Yeah, my undergrads, actually, and my collaborators who are now graduate students or, you know, in the field. So Vassar is an undergrad institution, and I'm fortunate enough to work with really brilliant young minds.
I love that.
I know. It's been one of my favorite things is to be able to work with my junior collaborators on work.
Right. And, you know, people, students who were previously economics majors.
Yeah,
and somehow
exactly.
Came to
Bring
psychology.
you to psychology.
So how did you, so you graduated with a PhD from Michigan. And what was your dissertation in this sort of thing?
It was.
Resilience and positive thinking?
It was looking at the parallels between psychological and physiological resilience. So looking at when we bounce back from stress, is it reflected in our bodies the same way? And from my work, the answer is yes. That when we're feeling positive emotions, it helps us downregulate and recover from stress, physiologically as well as psychologically.
Right. Very interesting. So do you work with physicians as well for this end of things?
Yeah, I've collaborated when I was a postdoc in Boston. We worked with clinicians and medical individuals from Mass General Hospital and Harvard. So we had a lot of teams that actually looked at, from a medical standpoint, some of the work that we were doing.
So, I mean, you've been doing this kind of thing for your entire career and academic career. When did it first hit that you wanted to look at the positive side of psychology instead of the negatives?
I think what I first did dedicated work was in graduate school. I worked with a researcher, my mentor, who studied positive emotions, and we were, it was launching at the time in terms of the field. This new field called positive psychology was emerging, and it was really great to be at the forefront of that.
What a treat. You seem so happy to be there.
I'm just I was really great. I'm grateful that I get to do this work, and I think that it really suits some of the things that my perspective on life.
Right.
So it's been fun.
And so what are you working on now? What sort of research studies do you have going on right now?
Right now, so I've done some work, like in terms of the application of my work. I've worked with NASA to try to apply
That's so
some of
ridiculously cool.
It's
sorry to interrupt.
No, I think that's one of the things that
stuff.
I think is really I don't know. When I was doing the research on resilience, NASA reached out to me because they were interested in how do we understand the experience of our astronauts who are in preparation to go to space on what are called long duration space exploration. And when you think about it, you're in a capsule with 3 other people alone for a long period of time while you're traveling to space, and you're going to the unknown. And so how would an astronaut manage their stress, or what tools might be useful for them if they're experiencing a lot of anxiety, or they miss their family and there's loneliness? And what are some of the tools that psychologists can actually teach astronauts? And what I do with NASA is help to review some of the grants that the researchers are writing to do research on astronauts in preparation. They have analog little sites throughout the United States where they simulate going to space. There's one in Hawaii, the Big Island, where they're living in a small container for months at a time, and they will mimic the delay in how they can text to a family member or for assistance. This is all in preparation for them to go to Mars. And there's a long duration there. So this is the ongoing research of the grants that I'm helping to review, or I chair some of the panels where the researchers are talking and reviewing. Is this a suitable study to run? Is there merit in the scientific method that they're proposing? And will it advance science in a way? Right. And is it ethical for the astronauts?
Now, I got to imagine that it would be useful to subject yourself to that same sort of situation.
Potentially. I don't know if I have to say the astronauts, their stamina, they have got some very powerful minds. Right. And I question whether or not I would, fare well. I have no desire myself to go to space. I love learning about it, and I love that there's research on it. But I think there's a lot to it, and there's a lot of preparation. These astronauts are selected. They've been training mentally for years before they're selected.
Right. So they're training, and one of the things I would guess they're trying to develop is sort of like a mental toughness, not an emotional softness.
Yeah, there is. But some of the work, exactly, it's an psychological toughness, mental toughness, so that if you're in space for months at a time and there aren't a lot of people, like your family's not there, or you're arguing with someone who is in your in space flight, how do you manage it? So are there tools that people can use? And I think that some of the research that's been done can help us learn about our experience on Earth also.
Sure.
So during the pandemic, for example, people were looking to the astronaut studies to understand loneliness, because we were all, or even how to live in our, homes where we were, we had to be in place for that time, settle in place.
Right. It's like during the lockdown.
During the lockdown, yeah.
Now, one of the studies that you did, which I found so fascinating, was you had a group of people you were studying just before 9/11, 2001. And you had, what was the initial study? On September 10th, What were you studying with these people?
We were studying what's called the undoing effect of positive emotions. So thinking about how when you're feeling positive emotions, you're really ramped up because your body is preparing you for action. Your blood pressure increases, heart rate increases, etc. We hypothesized that positive emotions, feeling joy or gratitude, would help undo that, bring it back down to a normal baseline level of experience. We were in the middle of collecting data, and then 9/11 happened. And we were wondering, does the research that we do in the lab actually have application in a high crisis, high trauma situation? And so we were able to call back our research participants from that ongoing study and assess them later to look at whether their levels of optimism or their levels of feeling joy or interest, did it help them recover from the 9/11 experience, the trauma associated with it, months later. And the answer was that those participants who had greater optimism and were able to muster up positive emotions like love and interest in reading about the news or gratitude, they recovered and they fared better than those who were not able to. So it was a real world application of how some of the work that we've been doing actually helps people in high stakes situations.
Right. Real world application, which like reinforced your thesis. You're like, wow, look, we were right.
Yeah.
But
thankfully.
I mean, a terrible tragedy, but for a researcher, kind of a gift to be able to have begun a study and then had this like major trauma happen and be able to go back to those people.
Yeah.
And so that seems to be where you are right now, still the same thing. Is there another book in the offing for you?
It's in the works. I'm preparing some work for a book, and the working title currently is Resilience Stories, to see if some of the things that I have been doing in the laboratory for the past several years has application in the world globally also. So I've looked at, I have people lined up that I want to include, medical students or people in Rwanda, where I taught medical students there.
Oh boy.
And and talk about resilience. These are individuals who have had to really deal with a lot in terms of, family, losing family members through genocide, and what they're actually able to experience hope. And they do, which is incredible.
Right. And that helps them in so many ways.
Yes.
Emotionally, physiologically.
And they're giving to their community is just something that's very specific and wonderful about their society, is they're giving back to their communities.
Right. So this book, will it be, a series of anecdotes, or?
It's going to be a combination of their stories as well as the research that I have. And it's more to a broader public audience, so that people can actually hopefully learn from some of the work that we've been doing.
Right. That's so fun. So when you do a book, there's always you and other collaborators in the academic setting.
Yeah, not necessarily. So this one is, when I say we, it's my students are helping to collect the information. They've been collaborators all along with some of the studies that I've been doing.
Right.
And they'll help to do the research on it, and also help to interview some of the individuals and help to identify who might be people to showcase in the book.
Right. Okay. So do you ever think of like sort of doing like a pop book on this? I mean, it seems, I'm thinking of Norman Vincent Peale and the Power of Positive Thinking, and Og Mandino, and all these guys from when I was a kid.
Yeah, and I think that's the intention of the next book, is to say, well, what does, people who are non-academics, can they resonate with this? And that's what the goal of the next book will be.
Love that. And how does that play in the hallowed halls of academia? If you do a book and, Oprah loves it and Dr. Phil loves it, and it becomes sort of a New York Times bestseller.
Yeah. Well, I think if it's grounded in academic work, I think that, Vassar would be very pleased to see it. And I think it's because it actually applies to the world. And that's ultimately what academics want to do, is to broaden the minds and, help people think about what we do in our, in our academic life, but also reach everyone else.
Right. Well, you've certainly done that. You broadened my mind anyway, and I guarantee you broadened a lot of other people's mind. In this new book, if it does what you seem to want it to do,
hope so.
Will broaden a lot more minds.
Thank you.
And now, guess what? We're out of time. It's been an hour. It always goes too fast. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. I've been talking with Dr. Michele Tugade. Michele, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Norm.
People have a great Friday night. There's First Friday going on right now in Rhinecliff. And have a great weekend. Good night.
Thank you.